Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 209 Journey podcast. I am super excited to be starting this podcast. It's been something that I've been planning here for a couple of months now. I am actually a podcaster that has been around for about a year and a half, working on other podcasts. And I'm really excited to be able to not only have another podcast, because I do have quite a couple of them already, but to be able to talk to people here in the 209 and be able to hear their story, right? Because ultimately, the goal of this podcast is to hear the story of the people of the 209, whether you were born here, whether you came from elsewhere, but you decided to make the 209 home, or if you came from elsewhere, you made the 209 home and then you left somewhere else. We want to hear your story, right? Because at one point, your journey took place in the 209. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here in the 209 Journey podcast. Awesome. Well, being that it is our first episode, I thought who better than to invite the one person that encouraged me to start podcasting, who told me about how to edit a podcast, because otherwise it probably would have taken me a lot longer to figure out the podcast tool that I was trying to use, which, by the way, wasn't all that great. He's got an amazing story to share too, and I'm so impressed by all the things that he's done in a short amount of time. I actually met him while I was working at Never Boring, which is a marketing agency in Modesto, in the heart of downtown Modesto there. So without further ado, let me introduce Anthony Pacheco to the podcast. Welcome, Anthony. How's it going, man?
Hey, it's going well. Yeah, good thing I showed you that software on how to edit podcasts, or else you wouldn't be on. What is this, podcast number 4 that you have? 5?
This is, I think I would probably say 5, although I have had others, but some of them haven't really been ongoing for too long. So yeah, we could say podcast number 5 in terms of podcasts that have had podcasts recently.
Jeez, that's crazy. I couldn't even keep up with one when we try to do one, but maybe one day we'll see.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah, great stuff. Well, being that it is the first episode, this episode's going to be all over the place probably because it is the beginning of this podcast. But want to get started hearing some of your backstory, right? So I know you were born, as I was as well, right here in Modesto. Tell me more about it, right? Like, where'd you grow up, and how was it like here being in Modesto?
Yes, our lovely hometown. I think I read something about how like those who are born in Modesto don't really talk about it, because when you're trying to do something here, like you generally hear people like saying, and I think this just goes with anyone who's born in any town, like they always want to leave, like, oh, I can't wait to leave my hometown or whatnot. But when you think of like the George Lucases and the Jeremy Renners of the world that were born in Modesto and don't even talk about it, is because when they were trying to pursue what it was that they were trying to do, like no one was supporting them. No one thought they'd ever get out of here. And the minute that you get out of Modesto or you do something, to propel your career forward, whatever it may be, like people more so get jealous of you, and then they get mad when you don't bring up the fact that you're from Modesto. So it's like an endless cycle of like, okay, you hate your hometown, but then like you weren't supporting the people that were trying to do something coming from here. I don't know. It's weird. But anyway, yeah, I was born in Modesto. I was born at Doctors, which most people I know were born there. And yeah, I actually grew up in probably the worst parts of Modesto. I lived right next to Orville Wright Elementary, which is by the airport area. I lived there for a couple of years with my grandparents, because my family is originally from El Salvador, and my grandparents came to the U.S. And then that was like the only place they could afford the airport area. I assume, I don't really know their whole story as to how they ended up there, but it's not the most expensive or not the nicest place around. So I assume that's where you'd be able to afford to live, being an immigrant basically. And yeah, I kind of upgraded. I tell people like before we went to another bad area, we moved over to by La Loma, which that's a little bit of an upgrade, right? I guess. And then eventually, like this is when I was like 6 or 7. We then moved to like around the Modesto High School area, which that's like by H Street downtown or
Mhm.
whatever. So that was another, not the best area also. So I kind of upgraded there too. But yeah, I lived in like the worst parts, and now I'm over here like off of Standiford by the mall. So I mean, it's not the nicest place, but it definitely is a little bit nicer.
Oh yeah, yeah, and we've all gone through those struggles, right? Where you come from those backgrounds, but little by little, right? We try to better ourselves and try to improve on that. But yeah, that's really interesting story, man. That just goes to highlight, right? Like I was saying earlier, your story is so impressive to me because you've gone from going to college, right? You went to MJC for like just a short bit, right? And then you decided that college wasn't for you. And it's one of those things where I always like to say that no matter, whether you go to college or you don't go to college, that doesn't mean that, you can't succeed in life, right? That doesn't mean that you can't find a job that might even be as paid as like someone who went to college. And it's really awesome, man. It's one of those things that people need to realize that if you decide to leave college, it might not be all that bad, right? And here we have you as an example of deciding, college isn't for you. You want to do something else. You want to be more of an entrepreneur and do your own thing. And at the same time, I know you probably had to go have that conversation with your parents, right? Get all that situated. But how was that
Yeah.
like? Like, walk me through, like, when did you make that decision of like, you know what? I'm just gonna like drop out of college, try and do my own thing. It's worked for other people. Like you said, George Lucas, for example, is one of those people that did that. And so
Mhm.
how did that come about?
Yeah, I think the college thing just really stemmed from my like earlier life. Like, you always hear about like, oh, our family moved here so you can go to school and, get a really high paying job so you can support your family and whatnot. And I always heard that growing up because like my mom had me when she was 17. Like she had me very young, and my father, my biological father wasn't in the picture. He dipped before I was even born. So like it like a little that just kind of sets the stage of like where my head was at, growing up. Like, okay, my mom, probably couldn't go to college or get like that high paying job as a first generation, everyone always wants like the first generation, that's new here to go to college and whatnot. And she could not do that, unfortunately, because she had me. And that was always something that like I subconsciously knew even at a young age, because I would like see all the other kids talk about like, their parents, like, oh, what do your parents do? And because before I went to like, yes, I lived in the bad areas, but by the time I hit third grade, I was doing so good in school that I got transferred to a private elementary school. It was private at the time, but now it's public. It's the Alberta Martone School. They were like the only school in Modesto City Schools that had they called it the GATE program, the Gifted and Talented Education. It was like AP classes for elementary school
Yeah.
kids. Because like I'm grateful that I was able to do that, and I have to thank like my first and second grade teachers from Robertson Road Elementary for that. Because like the not just because of the area we were in, but those kids may or may not have been the brightest just based off of their background, and school probably wasn't on their mind. But like I was reading like at a sixth and seventh grade reading level when I was only in like second grade. So they were like, yeah, like we got to get this kid out of here, like he's living in the ghetto and yada yada, like typical what you hear of like those kids that are meant to succeed and go off to like a nice college or whatever. And that was like the path, or kind of like the goal, or like the path that everyone was like kind of drawing out for me. Like I went through the GATE program. I had like straight A's all in elementary school. I had the option to go to Roosevelt Middle School because that's where all the people from that Martone school were going to, because Roosevelt was like the nice school, like all the
Mhm.
people were going to go there. And I had no way, no like transportation. Like my transportation would not allow me to go there, so I ended up going to Hanshaw, which that's like off of Crow's Landing. That's like the middle school, like off of Crow's Landing and Dallas Road, I think it's called. because that was my final upgrade before I moved out of my parents' house. We moved out of the Modesto High School area when I was like 12. Like when I was going to go to middle school, we were in the process of moving over to off of Carpenter and Crow's Landing, like where they intersect, like in those houses, like that are all like the Spanish names, like Rancho Encantado and all that other jazz. I forgot the street names there, but that's the area that I lived in. I want to say like 12 and on until like I was an adult and moved out. But being in like all of these like advanced, because even in middle school I was like in advanced classes too, and I crushed it in middle school. And long story short, I was pressured to go to Modesto High School because of the IB program. I don't even know how to pronounce that program, the Interbaccalaureate, whatever.
Oh, something like that, I think would be.
Yeah.
The Interbaccalaureate. Yeah, something
like that. Yeah, I can't even Google. I can't even type right now. But basically, it was like, you got your normal International Baccalaureate. Yeah, there you go. So you had like your normal college prep classes, and then your AP classes, and then the IB. That was like the elite per se of high school classes before they restructured. I don't even know if the IB program is still a thing, but that just goes to show how like I don't pay attention to that stuff as much anymore. But supposedly the IB level was harder. And, again, that was the path that everyone was laying for me. Like you got to go to these advanced classes so that you can show off in college and go to a good college, given your background, like whatever. And, I was the oldest, and I still am the oldest of like 16 grandchildren in my family. So like I had all of my cousins like looking up to me like, wow, Anthony was, in these high level courses, like he's going to Modesto High to do the IB program. And again, like even subconsciously as when I was younger, I was like, wow, I can't let these kids down. Like if I drop out of college, I'm just setting everyone else up for failure. Like the pressure's on me because, when you're the oldest, the pressure is on to like make everyone be a role model and be the example, right? So I was the oldest cousin. I was the oldest out of three. Like I have a younger brother and sister, so I was the oldest there. So I had to set a good example for them. So all these things were just very like pressuring, and then like my mind as I was entering my freshman year of high school. And when I graduated middle school, we had this like summer homework for the IB program. We had to read this book by Charles Dickens called Great Expectations. It was the worst book I had ever read in my life. Like I love literature. I love a classic. I can sit down and read like no other, but that book just ruined my summer. Like it pissed me off. I don't know what it was about it. I think it was just because like that's when I felt the pressure. I was like, wow, I got to read this fat book and write a report on it and take a test on the first day. Like we didn't even have orientation. Like we went over the syllabus last, like on my English class. Like as soon as we walked in, I remember this, like it happened yesterday. Cause like, then I had English first period. So I was like, oh man, like my first high school experience was to take a test. I didn't even know if that was allowed, but that's how they had it there. So like the first thing I had to do was take that stupid test, and like that just ruined it for me. I was like, wow, this is what I'm going to do for the next 4 years as an IB student, like just be treated like garbage, like it just really ruined like the whole education system for me. And like, as I was taking that test, I was like, why? Like, this is so much for just like a 14-year-old, or like, this is so much for my first day of like high school. And I took the test, whatever. Like as much as I like to complain, I did really well. I think I got like a B+ on it, like whatever. But it was just like, I don't like being told what to do, which is a bad thing. Cause like whenever you work somewhere, you have coworkers, you're always told what to do, right? Unless you're like in a leadership role, but you still have someone telling you what to do. But like, I always just question everything. Like, why do I have to do this? What's the purpose of this? Like, why, And like I'll just fast forward through high school. Like I pretty much flunked out like towards the end, because like I just got very burnt out. Like I tried my hardest like the first month or two in the IB program. I just didn't have a social life. Like
Mm.
it was really hard. Like I had like 3 to 4 plus hours of homework every night. I had to study for, quizzes and tests and whatnot. And it was just a lot to take in, and it really ruined it for me. So I was like, you know what, screw this. Like I'm just not going to try anymore, because like I don't want to be in this IB program thing anymore. And I asked my counselor too, like, hey, how can I get out of this? And he was like, well, you're here on a district transfer. You're not even supposed to be here. You're supposed to be a Downey High. So unless you're in the IB program, like you have to stay in the IB program to stay at Modesto High, right? So then for me, I was like, wow, like if I go to Downey, it'll be worse, because it was like technically it was within my district, but it was actually farther, because I would have to take the bus to go to Downey, but I couldn't because of how my parents' work schedule aligned. Like who was going to watch like my siblings, like who was going to take them to school, because it just didn't work. It wouldn't have worked out. So that was another thing where I was like, wow, I have to like force myself to be in this program unless something just comes about. And that's where like I went through a little bit of depression there. I was upset. Like I didn't know at the time that that's what it was. I just thought it was sad, because I didn't, when you're Hispanic, there's no such thing as depression.
Oh
like
yeah,
it's just
unfortunately, but that's changing.
Ponte las pilas. Put your batteries on, for those who don't speak Spanish. That's all you got to do. But yeah, hopefully it's changing now. They're being more open to mental health. But anyway, like it just wouldn't have worked out. So like I was like really stressed out, and yeah, it was tough. But then like the saying goes, like everything happens for a reason, right? Like I like, oddly enough, as soon as I stepped out of the office, I like came across this like flyer thing like on like the board or whatever, and it said something about like the Performing Arts Academy or something like that. It was called in high school, and I thought it was like a different school like to like go to, but it was just like a program within the school. So Modesto High had the just regular college prep courses, the IB program, and then they had already done it for a year. They had the Performing Arts Academy. But the Performing Arts Academy, it starts at your sophomore year, not your freshman year. So I enrolled in it, and then I got accepted into it. I think like to try out, you just had to like write an essay. But basically what the Performing Arts Academy was just like college prep courses, like regular ones, but like around the arts. So like when you're reading, Shakespeare or whatever in English class, you don't just read it. You actually talk about like the, performance aspect of it. Or we had like an elective course where we had to actually build sets around like the, things that we were reading about in English. So it all just like tied together. Like, it was a really cool thing that they did. And that really helped me understand that like at the end of the day, it's not about like striving for a career just to make money. Like you should strive for a career that, sure, it could, pay the bills, but ultimately it has to be something you enjoy doing. And at that time, I had no idea what marketing was. That's what I do for work now. But like at the time, for me, it was just like music was like my passion. Like I grew up listening to music all the time, and I wanted to be I wanted to be a rock star. But I knew that wouldn't pay the bills. So I was always told like, keep playing your guitar, but go to school, become a doctor, whatever. And then on the weekends, you can play at the local bar. So I was like, okay, I mean, whatever. That's how, life is going to be for me. I can't be a rock star, so I'm going to do this. And yeah, just the more I interacted with my peers and learned about like what their aspirations were, like everyone in the Performing Arts Academy wanted to be like an actor, or they wanted to be like a makeup person, like doing makeup for like special effects makeup and whatnot. And it was really cool just being exposed to like the creative side of things, especially in high school. Like I always, like anytime I see anything about the education system, it's like they want to get rid of the arts so that more people can be like exposed to STEM, like the coding and whatnot. Like they're just trying to force feed technology down people's throats nowadays, which is weird, but whatever. but yeah, like I attribute a lot of like my personality now and just knowing that I can like really pursue what I like doing to the Performing Arts Academy that I was in, because it really allowed me to help like get out of my shell, and to like I wasn't stressed anymore. Like I didn't feel pressure to be in like the IB program, because that was rough and crazy. Like it really just messed me up, and I had to make up those classes like my senior year, but whatever. Like I made it work. But yeah, high school was a trip for sure. But yeah, like and I saw it too. Like a lot of the people that I started at the IB program with, like they started dropping off as well. Like I remember like there was this friend I had. I remember his name, but I'm not going to say it because privacy reasons. But I started like I knew him since third grade. We were in the Gates program together. We had the same teacher from since third grade up until freshman year of high school. Like we went through it all together. Basically, we weren't like we were close friends between third and sixth grade, but I think in middle school we didn't really talk. I think because like we just had like opposite schedules, so we kind of just like fizzled out in middle school. And then I didn't know he was at Modesto High. I found this out later, because then like like he just didn't look recognizable by the time I put two and two. I was like, wow, that's him. And this was my junior year where I realized that it was him. I was like, wow, he's still in the IB program. That's crazy. And he like aged really badly. Like he had like gray hairs and stuff. And I was like, whoa, like this is not normal for like a child, like a teenager, to have like gray hairs because of his high school classes. And he did it. Like he stayed in the IB program all 4 years and whatnot. When he like I saw my graduation, he had like the tassels or whatever. He had multiple for being in all this stuff and being in the IB program and whatnot. And then a year after we graduated, I think he messaged me on Facebook. Like he was like, "Hey, like what's up, man?" And I was like, "Oh, hey, dude, like how you been?" And he was like, "Not much, just working at a car wash, going to MJC." And I was like, "Really?" Like all of that, like stress that you put yourself, like in my mind, I was thinking that like you went through the IB program and whatnot, it just end up at MJC like me, like that's where I ended up. And like I asked him, I was like, well, like why are you at MJC? You did all this stuff in high school. And he was like, no one cared. Like it didn't matter. Like I did the college essays. I told them I was in the IB program, but like none of the schools I wanted to go to cared. Like they were like, well, did you do any extracurricular activities? Were you in any clubs? Like, what'd you do? You just did school? And his pushback was like, well, I was in the IB program. They're like, we don't care about that. Like, we want someone who's like driven to like do other things other than just be in a, advanced class. Like, and that to me blew my mind. Like, that's crazy. Because as soon as you step foot on any college campus, what you did in high school is just irrelevant. Like all they look at is just like, okay, you took a couple junior JC classes. Like, okay, cool. Like, what'd you do at the JC? Like high school is just thrown out the window. So to me, that was such a waste of his like 4 years of high school, going through that, program and being spoon fed the idea that if you go through this, that it will prepare you for college or whatever. If anything, it like scared me of college. Like it just burned me out, because yeah, I didn't want to go to college if it was like that. And when I was at college, albeit it was a junior college, it was nothing like the IB program. It was much easier. Like college was a breeze, and I felt like I took advantage of that, but more on that later.
Wow, no, that's it's really sad to hear stories like that. And I think schools need to do a better job at communicating that with the students, right? They need to let them know that aside from being in these honor classes, also encourage them to be in clubs, to do more things. If they know that ultimately that's what colleges are going to be looking at, they need to communicate that with everyone, because like you said, it is a shame that like the guy spent all of his life in all these crazy classes, right? That had so much homework, that had you reading those huge books and all that. only for him to end up working at a car wash, staying local, while maybe someone else who was like on the football team, maybe got like a 2.5 GPA, slacked throughout high school, and then end up actually in a really good college that had they not played football, they wouldn't have been at. So it's really sad how that system works. And I'm with you, right? They need to do something to change that, because you can't be having these stories go on, because other people hear these stories, right? People listening now are hearing these stories, and I'm sure people now are like outraged, right? Like, how can you be so smart, uh, be going through this path, only for a college to say, well, yeah, we know you're really smart, but you didn't do X, Y, and Z. Again, you weren't involved in high school, and we can't take you for that. I just feel like that's really unfair. And I'm glad that when you realize that,
It
you're like, you know
is.
what? Forget that. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna like
Yeah,
continue
I
on.
catch wind of that now, or I hear like even people experience that, like even outside of like the college rejection. Like I can't tell you how many, like if you go on LinkedIn right now and filter the jobs by like entry level or
Hmm.
whatever, like it says it's an entry level position. You need a bachelor's degree and 7 years of like industry experience. And it's like, dude, I just graduated with my, like, I don't have a bachelor's, but like let's say I did have one. Like, how am I supposed to get 7 years of industry experience when I just got my bachelor's degree? It takes 4 years to get it. And then what, you expect me to have already, worked like, I don't even know math, 3 years to have 7 years of experience or something? Like, it doesn't make sense. But like, I don't know. It's crazy how the just the expectation that these people have when it comes to like school or just like even like work and industry experience. Like I don't know. I don't know what the steps are for change. All I know is that we do need change.
Oh yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, it starts with like politics and telling your politicians, right, to like pass bills and encouraging those things to go on, and all those advocate groups, right, that are out there, hopefully making some change on that, so that the people who deserve to be in those colleges actually make it there, regardless of where you come from, right? Regardless, like it shouldn't be any different if you're coming here from the valley or if you're coming from like LA, right? If you want to make it to the,
Mhm.
I don't know, for example, like UCLA, they shouldn't get preference to someone who lives there in LA over someone who lives over here, right? It's like it should be fair whether you live closer or in a big city or whether you live here in the valley. So hopefully things change on that front. But so eventually, right, you decide to also like just drop out of MJC, whatnot. How did that come about though? Like what did you tell like your parents or your family, right? You said all your relatives who were looking up to you. How was that like?
Yeah, it was rough. I had a lot of like just thoughts during that time because like I slowly just fizzled out of going to MJC because I was like enrolled there full time, like the 12 credits or whatever you needed to have. Um, I was fortunate enough to qualify for the I think it was called the BOG fee waiver, to where like they waive fees on your class. So all I had to pay for were like the books and the taxes of like the classes that I wanted to take. So um, that was really cool. But like, well, let me take a step back. Before I finally accepted my fate as just being a another MJC person, I did get into Fresno State, Sacramento State, and I think a school in San Francisco. I don't remember, but I know for sure it was Sacramento and Fresno because in high school and in middle school, I was in the AVID program, which was like a program to like help you to realize like it's like another college prep course basically. Like if you ever like, I think at MJC now, my sister's doing this. They have a course called like Introductory to College or whatever, or Fundamentals of College or something, that to tell you what college is like. Like that's what I did all in high school, and they helped me, also fill out my college applications. But another thing I attribute to me dropping out of MJC later on was because my AVID teacher in high school, he was great. He told me, if you're gonna go to college, just to get a bachelor's degree, don't even bother going. A bachelor's degree is as common as a McDonald's French fry. So if you're going to go to college, you better go get your master's or your doctor's or your PhD or whatever. And I was like, what? Like, everyone always talks like how bachelor's degrees are good. Like, what do you mean it's common? What do you mean it's not important? But whatever. I would argue you could still get far with a bachelor's degree. But yeah, like I just had like a realization and was just thinking a lot when I was at MJC, like, why am I like, or no, before I accepted going to MJC, I was like, why am I going to go to a 4-year college if I don't know what I want to do yet? Like, what's the rush? Like, I know I should go to college sooner rather than later, but like, why am I going to go waste, the government's money or, my money or whatever, if I don't know what I want to do yet? So I just bit the bullet and went to MJC for a little bit, but like, I slowly just started, I stopped showing up to classes because I was just like, man, like I don't like this. Like I don't like being here. Like it just doesn't feel right because I don't know what I want to do. Like I was still playing music at the time too, so I was like, I just want to play music and just continue doing that and try it out. At the time, like my band was also doing somewhat well. Like we were playing a lot of shows in Sacramento, and just down in Los Angeles. That's the other thing about like Modesto that at least musicians don't really like literally the only place you can like play at is the Queen Bean Coffee House. And like, depending on what type of music you play, that may or may not be appropriate. For us, we were playing rock music, so that was like a no-go most of the time. But anyway, a lot of the shows we were playing were in Sacramento and the band was picking up traction. So I was like, okay, like maybe I should just like stop going to college so I can focus on this. I'll get a job and start making some money. So I started working at an electronics store called Best Buy. And yeah, that was fun for a little bit. And I moved up rather quickly. I became a digital lead, they called it, a team leader. So I was like in charge of like the video game and camera department. So that was fun. And yeah, they were pretty flexible with my work schedule and whatnot. I mean, my band schedule. So like if I had to go on like tour or something, like they would let me like request like a week off. So I thought that was pretty cool. And this was around the time too where I was like looking for ways to like promote my music and promote my art, which kind of segues into like what I do now. And also like how I came to be at, where we met, which is the Never Boring Marketing Agency. I was just doing research on like paid ads and how to grow, an online fan base, and it worked. It did pretty well in the music, and our first album charted Billboard, which is really cool. And a lot of it was due to the online marketing that I was doing for us, which is just like involving myself in Facebook groups, interacting with people who would like our music, and yeah, that was all great. And I attribute to where I am in my career now as a marketer that niches in music a lot to like just me being a musician firsthand and doing the marketing myself. And yeah, like college is great if you know what you want to do and whatnot. And like they say, like, do your general studies and then you'll figure out what you want to do. But again, I just found it kind of backwards. Like I needed some real world experience, like, whether it is having like a, not so great part-time job at a, big box retail store, and just really learning like that customer service really isn't a fulfilling career, like no one wants to be yelled at for the rest of their lives. I mean, I understand people have to do those jobs, but like, hopefully you would want to do better for yourself after experiencing that. And, whether that is moving up within the company, working at, on a corporate level, or even like at a district level, like that's another thing that I actually explored being a Best Buy employee. Like I didn't like the customer service aspect of it. I really liked the numbers side of it. Like they were very, like I was very involved as like, even before a manager, like I knew exactly how much money my department had to make to be profitable. So like those are like the business, like that business mindset that they gave us really like helped me be more hands-on. Like you and I were both very like aware of like, P&L in the agency that we worked in, like, oh, we got to be conscious about how many hours we put into this project to not go over and so on and so forth. So like a lot of those things, yeah, I could have learned that in college, but like I felt like for me and the way I learned, it was better to see it happen, firsthand or for it to unfold. So yeah, I feel like I chose the right path. And like a lot of people ask me, like, if you had stayed in college, did the 4 years, gone a bachelor's degree, do you think you'd be where you're at now? And I would tell them no. Like, I probably would be like at a job I'm like not happy with, to be honest. Like, I probably wouldn't even be doing marketing. I would be doing something else, like coding or something that I don't really enjoy. But yeah, it's weird. Like, I'm just glad how things worked out. And even if it made people unhappy, like you asked me, like, how was that conversation when I told my family that like I'm not going to school? I never told them that I wasn't not going to school. They thought I was going to school the whole time. So jokes on them. I was paying for it too. So it's not like they noticed like, hey, like where's the schooling money going towards? Like I said, I was helped out by MJC to get like the fees waived. So like I was paying for it out of my part-time jobs, and I just wasn't going to school anymore. And they never knew until like I told them, hey, I got this job at this marketing agency with, yeah. And they're like, oh, well, what about school? And I was like, oh, I stopped going a long time ago, but that's okay. We don't talk about it. And they're like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah. They're like, okay, whatever. Like, you're an adult. Oh, we don't care. You live with your girlfriend. You live by yourself. Like, whatever. But yeah, that's how it all worked out, I guess.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, it's good that the conversation wasn't anything different, right? And it ultimately
Nah.
did work out for you. And I always, like I said earlier, I always say this, that college isn't for everyone. And even as a college graduate, like there are a lot of things that we do in our own career fields that college never taught us. And that's not necessarily because, college wouldn't teach you that, but because sometimes certain colleges don't have maybe the most up-to-date curriculum, and they might still be teaching things that might not be as relevant by the time that you actually graduate, which is really
Didn't you say
sad.
you took like a computer class where they were teaching you Dreamweaver or something?
Yeah, I took one, and
Like,
this was actually when I started too.
but like still like Dreamweaver's been like obsolete since like the early 2000s, hasn't it? Like,
Yeah, now it's all about what, right, WordPress, but WordPress
yeah,
is the one, right? And I remember years, or at least around that time, no one was giving you a class on WordPress. It was all Dreamweaver, FTP transfer, which for those of you who don't know is when you actually work off the software and you directly just transfer the information to your website without even going on your hosting site builder or anything like that. It was like a one-click transfer to that, but I mean, there might still be some people that do that, but WordPress, I think, is the king of website,
yeah.
creation. So yeah, that's one example. That's a good example right there on how things could get obsolete so quickly, and then you're like, hey, is my web designer degree worth anything? Not that I'm a web designer, but I was going that route, and then now I think about it, I'm like, hey, it's great, right? That I didn't go that obsolete route, but yeah, in your case,
Hmm.
I mean, you did much better. I do agree with you. You probably would be kind of like in the coding world. I could see you in some sort of like techie world, having to like not really talk to
Something.
anyone on the computer all day.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
Customer
it is
service too.
going to be, yeah, it is going to be full circle because I have been working on a software as a service thing for music marketing specifically. I'm not coding it. I'm basically like, product man. Like if it were a formal title, like I'm not going to call myself a CEO because I think that's cheesy, but like if I were like a product manager, basically, like I come up with the ideas or like what it would look like or whatever. And then I tell the developer that I hired, like, hey, like this is what I want it to do. How do we do this? And then I give him money and he does it. So that's my techie thing. So like if it were like Yeah, like if I was not a music marketer, I think like in the tech world, I would probably be like a product manager or a project manager or something like that that just comes up with the ideas. Because that's what I'm doing now for my
Mm.
software as a service startup thing. So I don't know. We'll see.
Which is good. I mean, you could be the visionary and someone else is the one who comes up with everything because like we know so many people that have been like that, right? A lot of successful people, they don't necessarily build it, right? Like Walt Disney didn't build Disneyland. You got Steve
Nope.
Jobs wasn't like actually building every single like
Yeah.
computer and phone, and they made it big, right? Where they were at, and it's worked out for you. I know you also do your Simpl marketing agency, music marketing agency that just got born while we were both never boring, and that was really great. And then just seeing how much it's evolved during these months, and now I think what is it like 2 years old, I think, or somewhere around there at this point. And
Yeah. You were there in the early days when I didn't even have a name for it. Like it was more of just like an idea. Like, hey, there's not a lot of marketing gurus in music. Like maybe I should try something. So yeah, here I am, still doing it.
Yeah, and
But
that's that's not an easy thing, right? To start something and be like, let's see, what where this goes to. I have all this knowledge in marketing, but I also want to mix it in with my passion for music, and it works out great, right? I see the results that you share with everyone, and you've had some interesting names in the band world that you now work with, and it's awesome to see you working and to see you deliver results that I'm sure they get so impressed and they're like, "Oh, how'd you do this?"
yeah, it's great. Like it's weird in marketing for me because like where your background in marketing stems from is like direct ROI or like, you're marketing a product or you're marketing a service, but it's weird marketing like music because there's never like a solid return on
Mm.
investment. Like 1,000 streams like on Spotify is like the equivalent to like, $7. And then you got to
Wow.
split that with the record label and all the songwriters if you're a band and like that, you're left with nothing. So like it's really hard to like for one sell it like what you're going to pay me x amount of dollars for you to make like $50 like that's like backwards, like no business would ever do that to be honest. But the reason we're successful is because we don't just drive up numbers, we drive up actual communities and fan bases for these people, and that in itself is like you can't put a price on that. Like if I can get you like 50 or 100 people that are going to message you each and every single day or comment on every single Instagram post, like you would pay good money for that.
Mm.
And it's just a matter of putting the music in the right people and executing it in the right way. So yeah, it's always really cool to do that for people. And that's always my pitch whenever like people ask me for like marketing advice or if they want me to consult on their business, that like, like if it's like an e-commerce store or like a service-based business, I'm like, if I can make people happy that don't walk away with an ROI, imagine how happy you're going to be when you walk away with like actual, ROI. Because as much as I love music, there's really not much money in it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially these days, being that uh, as much as I hate to say it, right? Like I know CDs are more obsolete, right? No one's buying a CD to still play on their like
Nope.
display or anywhere like that, and it's a shame, right? Because it's so cool to just own an actual item versus saying, well, I own it digitally, but it's like, yeah, but do you actually have the item that you can have in your collection and have all that? So yeah, it's something else there, but yeah, no, that's got to be really challenging to go through that. But I think it's just like they say, right, in the business marketing world too, right? You get one customer, and if it's a super loyal customer, that one's gonna drive so much more business because they're gonna go out there and do word of mouth, which is arguably one of the best marketing techniques you can have just in general, right? So I can imagine
Oh
that
yeah.
having 50 to 100 fans that are so dedicated to their music and whatnot over time just multiplicates into like 100, 1,000, 2,000, and before you know it, they know that each one of them is telling someone else, and that's how bands end up growing. And it's all about fostering those first 50, 100 loyal fans, right, that are going to help you out with that. So yeah, really great job with all you do with that. One thing that I do want to bring up before we end our first episode here is that thanks to your marketing agency and also, of course, to your experience, right, at Never Boring, and I'm sure at other jobs as well, but maybe more so the music agency you founded, you end up getting recently a job with Sony. Can you tell us more about that and just how was that like? How was the experience like?
Yeah. The Sony situation like happened over time. Like it's been in the works since like last August, like still during the pandemic. And I think I woke up one night and I was just like, I don't want to say angry, but like I was just like writing on my notepad, like just things that I started to see changing. And I heard your voice in the back of my head, like how marketing is changing in 2021. Like, you know, that SEO trick, like when it's the year 2020, like start writing about 2021, like early. So I did that. I wrote an article called How Music Promotion is Going to Change in 2021. I wrote that in 2020. And without getting super techy, it did really well on SEO. I'm proud of that article. I could probably fix it up more now. But anyway, I wrote that and it did really well on like LinkedIn. They got a lot of likes, they got a lot of shares. And this podcast, like this music industry podcast, like they niche and like they always talk about music business and music industry stuff. The hosts like read it like on their podcast, like they were doing commentary on it, like they were like skimming over it, talking about it. And it was featured in their newsletter, which I actually was on their podcast, like their other podcast last week. And I guess they had like 10,000 people on their email list. And a couple of them were people from Sony. And one of the A&Rs at the label that I work at emailed me. It was like, hey, like I read your article here. Like this is really cool stuff. I just wanted to say hi. So we had been talking since like last August. And I wasn't looking for a job at that time. I was just focusing on, you know, growing my own agency and TikTok. And long story short, like at the top of this year, we reconnected and they were like, hey, like we have a, you know, job opening. Like if you're interested, like, you know, just apply for formality's sake, but it's there if you want it. And I was like, oh, okay. Because we had talked like multiple times about just like marketing. Like it was basically networking. Like I was just talking to him about like what I do and how, like what I would do if I were to help out his artists. And yeah, fast forward to now, it worked out. I work in the comfort of my home in Modesto, California. I don't have to be at the LA or the New York office for Sony. And yeah, I work there now. So Sony Music is like a venture capitalist, kind of like they have a lot of little labels. Like they have Columbia Records, they have RCA, they have a bunch of like joint venture labels. I work at a joint venture label called Disruptor Records that the CEO of this label, he was he still is the manager of the Chainsmokers. And he started a record label through Sony, I believe, for them, or that was like the artist that really took off in order to start that label. And we're in a unique position because we only have 11 employees, including myself, like on the direct team. So like rather than like if I were to have started out like Columbia or RCA, I'm sure they have like 100+ employees. So it still feels like a small business kind of, to where like I can make an impact like almost immediately, or like an impression almost immediately. And I feel like I already have in the short time I've been there. So yeah, who knows what's next, you know? But yeah, I'm just really happy that I started at a smaller label at a major label, basically, because we also partner up with the bigger labels. Like the Chainsmokers is signed to Disruptor, but is also signed to Columbia Records, which is that record label has like Harry Styles and a bunch of other big A-list artists. So I get to interact with that team as well. And, you know, if I'm nosy enough, I could find out who the marketing person is and just, you know, talk to them, because we're basically coworkers. We all work for the same company, but there's opportunity there, you know, like there's overlap there, I guess. Like, so I think that's a really cool situation to be in for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's really awesome. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I'm so impressed with how far you've gone and how far you're going to continue to go. And, you know, really, really putting the name of Modesto up there and really getting yourself out there in an industry that you love, because I know how much you love music, and that's got to be like you're almost there in the dream job that you want, and you're working towards it. And really want to thank you so much, right, for being on this first episode of the 209 Journey, Anthony. It was really awesome catching up back with you. I know we hadn't really spoken too much in 2020, and so it's really cool to hear your story. There's a lot of things that I'd never heard. So for all the listeners, a lot of things that he mentioned today, I had no idea about. And it's really awesome hearing those things, and just how far you've gone in life, and super inspiring. And I hope someone listening, got inspired by your story. And if they don't go to college, know that, they too can make it to where you're at right now. So, and where you'll be too, of course. So yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. We'll talk soon, okay?
Okay, awesome. Take care.
You too.
Thank you so much again to Anthony Pacheco for being our first guest here on the 209 Journey podcast. Really enjoyed the conversations. Really amazing all that he's done in such a short amount of time. And, I think he has a really bright future, and, hopefully he keeps moving up in the music industry. And, we can see him out back with his band too, because I know aside from helping bands succeed, he also loves to, play the guitar, play his music, and be able to tour around the country as well. So best of luck, Anthony. And thank you so much to all of you for listening to this first episode. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we have a Facebook and a Twitter page. You can follow us there if you search for the 209 Journey podcast. On Twitter, it's at the 209 Journey. On Facebook, you can also just search for the podcast, and you will be able to find the page there. Please give us a follow. If you'd like to be on the show, or if you know someone who could be interested in being in the show, please feel free to reach out to us on our social media platforms there. Send us a message, let us know too. I am working on getting more guests on the show. So thank you so much to everyone for listening again. We'll see you next time here on the 209 Journey podcast.